Get ready, because today we're going to talk about how to use strong dialogue to drive your stories. By the way, my name is Brandon McNulty. I'm the author of The Half Murders, and welcome to my writing channel. A lot of people enjoy my bad versus good dialogue videos, and I often get asked about doing a more straightforward how-to video on the subject. Today I thought we'd do that, and what we'll analyze the key purposes of dialogue, then we'll look at how to build the good stuff step by step, and finally I'll give you some bonus tips before we wrap up the video. Now first off, let's talk about the three higher purposes of dialogue. And I say higher because some writers think that the purpose of dialogue is simply to convey information, to provide details that keep the plot moving. Now, while that's certainly part of the deal, dialogue does much more than that. I'm going to share with you three higher purposes, and the first one is that dialogue is action. This is the big one. In the past, I've talked about how dialogue should attack and defend, meaning that characters should use their words in order to achieve goals or protect themselves. The idea here is that you want dialogue to perform the same function as a weapon or a shield. Here's a scene from The Godfather that illustrates what I mean. It's when Michael returns to the United States after disappearing, and he asks his girlfriend Kay to marry him. Now pay attention, because Michael is on the attack here while Kay tries to defend.
I'm working for my father now, Kay.
But you're not like him, Michael. I thought you weren't going to become a man like your father.
My father's no different than any other powerful man, like a senator or a president.
You know how naive you sound.
Why?
Senators and presidents don't have men killed.
Who's being naive, Kay?
What do you want of me after all this time without even calling or writing?
I came here because I need you, because I care for you,
Please stop it, Michael.
because I want you to marry me.
There's no violence in this scene, and yet the dialogue performs strong action. It allows Michael to close his grip around Kay and drag her back into his life. The second higher purpose is that dialogue is character. Dialogue should tell us something about the character speaking. It should indicate their present concerns as well as their past experiences. When we're talking about the present, the character should speak based on the current situation. This is where you want to ask important questions like, what is the character's goal? What do they want? How will they suffer if they don't get what they want? Another thing to consider about the present is that when there's conflict, this forces the character to speak and reveal things about themselves. Different characters will take different approaches to achieving their goals, and some may yell and give orders, while others strategically disarm their opponents.
I am the king!
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king. I'll make sure you understand that when I've won your war for you.
When we're talking about the past, we're talking about how characters' dialogue should reflect their upbringing, intelligence, education level, where they grew up, and so on and so on. This not only creates a more realistic portrayal of the character, but it also contributes to world building, which brings us to our next point. And the third higher purpose of dialogue is world building. Believe it or not, dialogue is a great way to establish your setting, whether your story takes place in a small apartment or a vast fantasy world. And dialogue does more than simply convey world building details through conversation. It goes deeper than that. The speaking styles, conversation topics, and underlying meaning all help us understand how the story world works and how people function within it. Here's a scene from John Wick in which John speaks to a local cop after shooting several assassins who broke into his home. Pay attention to how it clues us in on the story world.
Evening, John.
Evening, Jimmy. Noise complaint.
Noise complaint. You, working again?
No, just sorting some stuff out.
I'll leave you be then. Good night, John.
Good night, Jimmy.
The dialogue here, especially the casual tone in which it's spoken, it paints a vivid picture of the John Wick universe and its history. We get a clear sense of how assassins operate within this world, and nobody has to spell it out for us with info dumps or anything of the sort. Alright, now let's talk about how to write strong dialogue. First off, I want to say that the secret to constructing effective dialogue is constructing an effective scene. If the scene is well structured and focused, it's much easier to introduce strong dialogue. I've done some recent videos on writing scenes, and I'll link to them at the top of the screen as well as in the description below. But for now, the first step to writing good dialogue is to determine the amount of dialogue needed in a given scene. The most important thing to keep in mind here is the scene goal. What does your character want? How much dialogue is required for them to achieve their goal? If they're sneaking through a dangerous area, there probably won't be much dialogue. But if they need to talk their way out of a problem, the scene might be loaded with dialogue. Also, while we're on the subject, try varying the amounts of dialogue in your scenes. Maybe you open your story with a couple scenes that are light on conversation, then you shift to one that's heavy on conversation. Then you alternate back and forth over the course of your story. And this is a great way to keep your dialogue fresh. Second step to building strong dialogue is to decide what scene values are at stake in the conversation. Robert McKee talks about these values in his book Story, and the way that they work is basically every scene starts with a positive or negative value, and that value changes over the course of the scene. For example, say your hero is on a first date with someone they admire. The value here would be companionship, and at the start it would be negative because the two people just started dating. Then the hero starts talking, builds a romantic connection, and the date ends with the two sharing a kiss. In this case, the value of companionship would go from negative to positive. Always make sure that at least one value in a scene changes. If nothing changes, the scene either needs to be cut or rewritten. And when you're working dialogue into a scene, make sure that dialogue contributes to the change we're looking for. Step 3 is to consider power dynamics. When two or more characters engage in dialogue, one usually has more power than the others. Power might be the result of status, confidence, appearance, or past history between the characters, but it will impact a conversation just like how skill impacts a sword fight. Now, when you're writing your scenes, figure out who the bosses are and who the employees are. This will help focus your conversations, it'll help you determine who can say what, and from there you can give your characters opportunities to seize power through dialogue, just like in this example from Game of Thrones.
Jaime has fled the city. Give me leave to bring him back to justice.
I took you for a king.
Hold your tongue.
He's attacked one of my brothers and abducted the other. I should wear the armor, and you the gown.
Step number 4 is to create subtext. I've talked about this in my bad good videos, but I want to put a reminder here because subtext is important. Ideally, you want dialogue that works on 2 levels, text and subtext. When a character says something, the words that are spoken are the text. At the same time, there's also going to be meaning beneath the surface of those words, and that's the subtext. Subtext exists because when characters face conflict, they usually don't say what they truly mean. Instead, they bury the meaning to be polite or to hide their true intentions. And audiences love this because subtext gives them something to engage with. Finally, step 5 is to find balance between what sounds natural and what sounds polished. Good dialogue won't sound like everyday human speech. Regular speech is loaded with filler, empty pauses, and cliched word choice. Instead, good dialogue should sound like idealized speech. It should sound realistic with a layer of polish to it. It's like speech that's getting ready for a dinner date. It should sound its best while still resembling the real thing. Alright, now before we wrap up this video, I've got 5 bonus tips for writing dialogue. The first one is to avoid empty greetings. We just talked about avoiding filler, and one thing you definitely want to avoid are empty greetings and goodbyes.
Hi, babe.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, Denny.
Hey, Denny. How are you doing? I'm fine. What's new?
Hi, Mom. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Oh, hi, Danny.
Hey, Peter. Come on in.
Oh, hey, Peter.
Hey, Johnny. What's going on, man?
Oh, hi, Mike. What's new?
Hey, Johnny.
Oh, hi, Danny.
Hey, Mark. What's up?
Oh, hey, Peter. Hi, Mark. Come in. Oh, hey, Johnny. Hey, Peter. Bye, Lisa. Oh, hi, Colette. Oh, hi, Mark.
Oh, hey, Johnny, what's up?
Many newer writers like to include these greetings, and while the occasional greeting may sound natural, characters are usually better off skipping straight to the point. Tip number 2 is to avoid wandering conversations. You know how I just said that your characters should get right to the point at the start? That also applies to the conversation as a whole. Now, while it's okay if a character tries to direct the conversation away from an uncomfortable subject they're trying to avoid, make sure the scene doesn't spin in circles without any purpose or direction. Tip number 3 is to treat dialogue like action. We've talked about how dialogue is action. Now, if you were writing an action scene like, say, a sword fight, you would consider important details like who swings first, who's positioned where, and different turning points in the battle such as knockdowns, injuries, the high ground, etc. Dialogue deserves the same attention to detail. You want to consider the progression of attacking, defending, and counterattacking. Consider how much power a character can afford to give up. And of course, note important developments that impact or change the direction of a conversation. Tip number 4, add physical actions and reactions to your dialogue exchanges. If characters are simply standing around talking, the scene can feel static. That's why you should consider giving them actions to take and activities to perform while speaking. Even something as simple as walking or observing the setting can go a long way. Now, as for reactions, I did an entire video on them recently, which I'll link to, but the key thing to know here is that emotional reactions create meaning in your stories. Whenever words are exchanged, you need to include the appropriate character reactions. Our final tip for today is to read your dialogue out loud. I know it's extra work and us writers tend to be quiet people, but there's a lot of value in reading your dialogue out loud. Not only does it allow you to test whether it sounds natural, but you can also get a better feel for sentence structure and pacing, among other things. Even if your dialogue is already strong, reading and listening to it can help you fine-tune things even further. Either way, it's always best to speak it before you submit it. So I hope this helps. Question of the day, what is your favorite dialogue exchange from a story? Let us know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching. If you want to support the channel, please pick up a copy of any one of my books and be sure to leave reviews on Amazon. If you like horror stories, you'll love The Half Murders. It's about a woman and her daughter who go into a haunted house and they get chopped in half, and for them, the nightmare is only beginning. Also, be sure to check out my other videos, like, share, and subscribe, and as always, remember to keep on writing.